Hello, I am Yogini Sunita, and this is Meditation, Yoga, and Stuff podcast. I believe my dharma or my life's purpose is to share my understanding of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda, holistic healing science of India. I make these amazing wisdoms accessible and adaptable for present times. So let's start. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's our guest is Mark Seeto. Mark, am I pronouncing it right? Would you like to talk?
No, that is perfect. Mark Seeto, that's me.
Wonderful. So, Mark, tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself, your journey to yoga.
Sure. My name is Mark Seeto, born and bred in Australia. My journey to yoga has... Look, I was living in the UK in 2005, 2006, and back then was the first time I dabbled in yoga. My practice definitely did not start back then. But I was at the gym at that time. I discovered Pilates at that time, and I definitely got into Pilates, and that's kind of been quite a consistent practice since back then. But I dabbled in out of yoga a little bit back then, but it never grabbed me. I think I was very young at that point, my early 20s, so in my mind, it was more about high energy, athletic, strength stuff. And yeah, when I jumped in and out of yoga, I did a couple of different yoga classes. I remember an Iyengar class in particular, and also a Kundalini class, which had it had an effect on me. I don't know if it was a positive or a negative thing, but it was an intense effect. But look, I got back to Australia in 2008, and then in 2009, I discovered a brand here in Sydney called Power Living, and they offer heated power yoga, and that kind of became very quickly my practice. Almost overnight, I was really drawn in by the whole power yoga thing, the intensity of it, the heat of it, the community, which was a strong community in the Manly studio at that point, and it really grabbed me. And look, from that point, for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I was practicing there 5 to 6 times a week. And that whole power yoga thing was really speaking to me. And then two things kind of happened simultaneously. The first thing was I discovered yin yoga through power living. And that was, I rocked up to my first yin yoga class at Power Living. I was like shirt off, little shorts, and, kind of expecting something alongside, power yoga. But then this was a very different experience, very different. And, I think, how, I guess, ignorant I was at that point at just the differing degrees between power yoga and yin yoga. I just had no idea. But that was a really profound class and moment to be able to explore yoga in that way, which was so physically different to what I was used to. And then also similarly at that time, I did my teacher training as well. And in those first couple of years of teaching yoga, I was already teaching Pilates. I worked for Virgin Active at that point already. So I was in that fitness space, and, I had clients and friends saying, oh, you should teach yoga, or when are you going to teach yoga? And for me, in those first few years, I was just like, I'm not, when I look up to one of my teachers, I see a lot of, experience and knowledge, and I was like, I'm just not there. I very quickly recognized that there's so much more to yoga and the depth of yoga, and especially what I was getting from my teachers. I couldn't do that so quickly. So it was 2 or 3 years of really heavy power yoga practice. And then I did my teacher training, and that was a complete, that was, it was a 200-hour with power living. We did it over a few weekends, but then we went on retreat in Byron Bay, and that retreat for 7 days in Byron, it was just a life-changing moment for me. I learned so much about yoga, but more so about myself. It was real retreat style as much as it was part of our teacher training, and just it really opened up my eyes at just how powerful, the practice of yoga is. And I haven't looked back since then. I started teaching after that, and that would have been 2012. And I've been teaching since then. And I guess, what I'm doing now for Virgin Active, I'm the global head of Yoga and Pilates. And I guess starting my journey back then, never would I have thought that I'd be looking after yoga at a global level for a brand like Virgin Active. But that's kind of where this journey's taken me. And I've been in this job now since 2019, and it's fantastic. I get to, especially now that COVID's kind of over, I get to travel and be with our teams at a global level. We're in, Virgin Active's found in 6 countries. So we're creating a lot of alignment and a better community, better quality of yoga. We're really trying to pull more people into the yoga space. That's definitely our number one intention. And I'm currently in Australia right now as we record, but actually I'm based in Cape Town at the moment, doing a lot of work with our South African team for yoga. It's been a bit of a crazy journey. I would have never thought it would have come to the point where it is now, but I'm really grateful for being able to have this really enlightening and empowering career through yoga. I feel very lucky.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I know yoga is very transformative. It is really my personal experience is similar. Like it has completely transformed who I am or who I thought I am. And it has been literally this is teaching yoga is something very close to my heart. And I think that what we're doing is this sharing it with the world and helping people to feel better. And this is something I truly believe is my dharma. And I think you are doing your part of your dharma as well by sharing it with the global, on this such a global scheme. Your experience, you said that it has really helped you. Anything in particular you want to talk about? Like what do you think? What yoga philosophy has given you, or anything, not even just philosophy, maybe physical side of it. What is it your understanding you gain through wisdom of yoga?
Oh my God, that's a big question. Look, from the physical side of things, just being able to move well, build on that mind-body connection, being in tune with your physical sensation and, when your body is telling you something, even, down to the simplest thing of, am I feeling sick today? You know what I mean? Like there's this kind of physicalness that, I guess sometimes it's still, even after being in the fitness industry for 15 years, it's kind of, sometimes it surprises me that not a lot of people have that. Like they often can't connect or don't have that relationship with their physical selves. And, I think for me, yoga, like I said previously, I spent a lot of my early 20s and right up to my 30s really just, focused on kind of the more hard stuff, right? As we do when we're younger, typically. But I think, stepping into yoga, it's been able to help me become much, have a deeper understanding of the subtleties of our physical selves. And I guess part of that also, our energetic selves as well. and then, of course, when we speak about mind-body connection, then just having this greater connection with what's happening in your head and in your heart, and also in your gut, like this gut-brain axis, and having this deeper understanding and intuition that comes with being able to build on that relationship with the deeper parts of yourself. And I think a lot of that is, the real, the overall physicalness of being in this body. So, I definitely, I'm grateful for that. It's a continuation though, it's not like it's ended. I don't think there's a point where you're just like, I'm perfectly in tune with my body. I definitely don't feel like that's the case, but I'm glad that I have these moments of intuition and connection with this, this thing that we're living in for this life,
Yeah.
I think the other side for, I went to Rishikesh in 2011 for the first time, and I had no idea why I was going there. I just was like, I need to go to India. And, I was working for Virgin Active at that time, and I was very lucky to be able to take an extended break, use up all of my annual leave and then some. And, I was able to go to Rishikesh for 3 months. And again, I just, no idea what took me to that place. I didn't know, I had no plans. I didn't book anything. I booked my ticket. I left my phone, laptop, everything in Australia, and just got on the plane and left. And it was kind of February time. And, after a few days in Delhi and Haridwar, I ended up in Rishikesh, and I just walked into the city and it was just completely open to whatever happened. And I met this guy. He took me to a guest house. I booked in at the guest house, dropped my bags, and went down into the restaurant. And I met this English guy just randomly because he was the only guy there that had a spare seat at his table. And he started talking to me about this guy named Muji, and invited me to come to satsang to see Muji. And, that experience for me, I rocked up to satsang that week, and I was really challenged, like I saw a lot of different people in the audience. It was it was not really the community that I was used to, but I was somehow intrigued and somehow, really kind of interested in what was going on. And, it was the final week that Muji was there. He typically would go to Rishikesh for 6 weeks at a time to hold satsang. And it was the last week that he was there. So there was about 7 days left. And, day one for me, I was at the back of the room. I was very judgy, I was judging people and what was going on. And then day by day, I'm just like, oh my God, like something's here. And by the end of that week, I was the person up the front, like just hanging off every word. And, that pathway of self-realization, and, having this, at that point, this kind of intellectual understanding of the path of self-realization, truly getting an understanding of who we are, that was just mind-blown for me. And to be in that community surrounded by these like-minded people and sitting, at the feet of Muji, it was just it really rocked my world, but in a very positive way, right? And I had an experience with him on that final day, which just, I've still got the rose petals that he handed to me on that final day. And it was very profound, right? And then I ended up on retreat with him later that year and had really amazing, enlightening experiences. And I think that's, yoga took me to Rishikesh, and yoga somehow just knew that I was supposed to be at the feet of Muji in that week. He left, and I ended up in a yoga ashram there, Anand Prakash, and spent the next 2.5 months practicing, 5 to 6 hours a day of meditation and satsang and bhajan and kirtan and yoga. That period, that moment of 3 months was just out of this world. And yeah, I think alongside the physical stuff, yoga has enabled me to have this greater understanding, this path of self-realization. And, when you take this path and have that understanding of what we truly are, it just, the stuff in life that we sometimes, and I still, of course, get upset about things and angry about things, but when you take that step back and remind yourself like what we truly are, then that stuff just falls away. Like it truly doesn't, it really doesn't matter. We're much greater than this. And, for me, this is just one life of many, like it's one further step towards greater enlightenment. And that's cool for me, like I don't have any fear otherwise. So yeah, I feel like it's, that, I guess that sounds quite out there, but that's truly what yoga's done for me.
Beautifully said. I totally agree with you. Yoga can give us this peace and understanding that we are bigger than just our anger or day-to-day, hustle and bustle. And I'll tell you my experience about taking people to India, because a lot of my friends wanted to go to India, and they are all in yoga world, basically yogis. And we've done few courses together and things like that. And so they said, we would like to go to India, but we'd like to go with someone who is familiar with us. And so would you take the group? And that's how it started. And so I started taking group, and I go to Rishikesh. I don't go to Haridwar or Varanasi. I go to Rishikesh because my calling is Rishikesh. I prefer to go there personally. So I want to give that experience to people. And so India literally is called Mother India for a reason, because people do get these kind of experience, what you have explained very well, that it is life transforming. It is challenging. Like it is a Mother India because it gives you that challenge. It's not necessarily kind. It may have firm hand, like the mother has firm hand, but it gives you what you need. And I have seen this, like I have taken group few times, and I have seen this every time, that it is always like people go through a lot of emotions. And so my job is in these tours is to, or the retreats we call it, is to be there and hold space to let it unfold. And I usually go in Feb. So you mentioned that, that you went in Feb. I like to go in that time because that's the time where like a lot of tourism has already finished, and you go there and it's a bit quieter. And Muji, I can imagine, like he is such a divine being. I never personally experienced his lectures, but I have listened to them online. So I can imagine being in his presence, like must be really divine. I go to my guru, though, who is in my state, and in his presence, I feel the same thing. Like it's just these enlightened beings just sitting at their feet is a different experience, and it's feels out there, but it is really positive. And having like a sangha, your community, is very powerful. And especially on the path of yoga, we do need, or any path really in life, even if we want to succeed in our life, having people, like-minded people, is very powerful. So having your community where you feel connected, held, is really beautiful. So I think you experience it very well, and you put it in your words very well. So thank you for doing that. And let's talk about the yoga world. Like when we come back to this modern world after leaving the Rishikesh behind us, what is your take on it? Because I had to like learn to find that balance? Because the retreat itself is amazing, always, right? When we take this time out, but when we come back to living in this reality, how can we still be yogis on this path? How can we still be, better person? And that's the constant thing, So how do you manage that? Any thoughts, anything you want to share?
Yeah, look, it's difficult. I got to be honest, it is difficult, right? Like, it's something I say to my friends, to my students, to other yogis. It's like, wouldn't it be great if we could just live on retreat all the time? But, in this modern world, that's just not possible, right? For the vast majority of us, that's never going to be possible. We do need to be here at home with family and work and the commitments that we have in living in this modern world and living this modern life. So I guess my advice is always let's try and bring the elements of retreat into our everyday life. Like we can't spend, because we're at home working for the majority of our year, right? Like, we can't spend the majority of our year waiting and wishing for the 2 or 3 weeks that we might get to go on retreat, whether that's in Rishikesh or Bali or Fiji or wherever retreat is for you. We can't wish away the rest of this time. And I think sometimes we get into that habit of wishing away life just so we can be on holiday, like this kind of countdown. Oh, it's only 6 months to my holiday. Oh, it's only 3 months. It's like we're kind of wishing away that time. And I don't think that's the right mindset. I think it's good to be excited about a holiday or a retreat or something, or sitting with your guru in 6 months' time. I think it's important to be excited about that and to look forward to it, of course. But I think we need to be careful about kind of wishing away that time just to be there in the future. And, of course, yoga teaches us not to be living in the future or the past, but to be in the present, So I think that's part of it, right? I think part of it is we do need to live in the present, because we only get one shot in this lifetime, at least, in this body, in this moment. So I think we need to do our best to try and practice being super present every day, regardless of what's coming or what's past. So, if for me today, I did a little bit of a calisthenics workout, followed by an asana practice, and then I sat and just practiced Chandra Bedana, left nostril breathing, because I just need more moon energy in my body right now. And so for me, that was an hour all up, right? That was an hour all up, and I'm blessed to be able to do that in the morning out in the sunshine. But that's a huge way for me just to pull myself into today and into this moment. Even though I know actually next month I'm going to Rishikesh in November, so I'm very excited about that. But, and I guess in a way I could be very caught up in what's going to happen in Rishikesh from the 3rd of November, which I am very excited about. And I could be kind of leaving my practice to that point, because I am going on a yoga retreat. But it's like, no, like, I'm here now, like, this is still, whatever month we're in, September. Oh yeah, we're in September. It's actually 2 months away. I need to be in this moment now. I'm in September now. Let's go and practice out on my back deck. But I think the other thing, when you look at yoga and the 8 limbs of yoga, and of course in the West right now, we do see yoga as this asana practice, right? It's purely this physical thing. Maybe there's some pranayama, maybe there's some meditation, but mostly we see it as this physical practice. And I think for me, of course that's important, and that should be part of our weekly yoga practice. But there are all these other ways to practice yoga. And I think sometimes, being able to sit with students and see that being part of a community can be your yoga practice, connecting with your loved ones, taking your dog, which often we love our pets, for a beautiful walk in nature, and being mindful of that moment in nature and the connection you have with your loved one or your pet. There's different ways that we can bring yoga into our life. It doesn't necessarily only have to be asana practice. Sometimes for those that are super busy, just stepping away from the laptop for 5 minutes to sit with your eyes closed and breathe. That's a way that we can just take 5 minutes of our busy, hectic schedule and pull a moment of yoga, pranayama, mindfulness, into this moment right now. So, of course, the retreats are grand and exciting and fun and so important, but equally sitting to the left of your laptop for 5 minutes and taking 5 big deep breaths, that can sometimes be just as powerful, I think.
Very beautifully said. I always tell my clients, like I do a lot of mentoring sessions as well, and I sometimes I have clients from the corporate world as well, and very busy lives. And so what happens in that case, like literally even sometimes they don't even have 5 minutes in there. When they say that, I always think that maybe they need to evaluate what's happening with the life. But I always meet my clients where they're at. So what I suggest to them is just 2 minutes and, have a dot on your, something like a sticker or something on your screen. When you see the screen, that sticker, take a moment and take few breaths, like close your eyes and few breaths. And that is doable, right? Like you don't even have to move from. And so we start there. And then from there, we start moving into more different practices. And then possibly, after some time, maybe meditation practices and things like that. But yoga is a lifestyle, right? It is a lifestyle. And when we understand that yoga can be in anything we do, right? The meditation can be even eating food mindfully is a meditation. So we can bring in that elements in our life. And when we get these experiences say, for example, in retreat, and people say, oh, I would love to go to retreat all the time, but that's not possible. But can we create retreat here? And as you say very correctly, that yes, we can. These moments, these few moments when we have in our life, we can definitely create these retreat experiences. Let's come to the yoga world as yoga world is extremely physical at the moment, and I usually don't go into the politics of yoga or anything. I just do what I what I meant to do, my dharma. But whenever I open social media, all I see is these bendy body into weird, pretzel poses, and sometimes it's called master yoga class, and it's all about physical yoga. And I always sit back there and think like, are you master, to teach these practices? Like what's happening here? And I notice that it's all like a ego, which is coming forward. We are still connected, very much connected to the ego. And on the path of yoga, we let go of that very slowly and steadily. And what happens that the social media algorithm is like a bendy body. If they get more clicks, obviously that's going to be more put forward to people. So people see that as a yoga. What are your thoughts about this? Like what you want to say on these, what's happening with the modern?
Yeah, for sure. Look, it is a tricky subject, right? As you said, right? It is a little bit political, and there is absolutely a lot of ego attached to some of the typical stuff we might see on social media when it comes to yoga. Or, if you hashtag yoga, typically you will get a lot of really, I guess in some instances, like some really inspirational, aspirational kind of images where people, are inspired by that, and maybe sometimes that's what actually helps someone to step into a class for the first time. But then I think on the flip side of it also is that, if I work for Virgin Active. We're a huge global fitness brand. We are a gym, so we attract gym people. We offer yoga in all of our clubs across the world, but people don't join us because of yoga, right? People join the brand because they want to go to the gym, or they want to do high energy classes, or these days everyone's doing Pilates Reformer, so they might join for Pilates Reformer. But often the people that we end up in our yoga classes, often, not always, but often, they've stumbled across the yoga studio at their Virgin Active club, and they're like, oh, I should do yoga. We know that most people realize, they know intellectually that they should do yoga. They know that there will be benefit, right? Which is amazing for us in the yoga world, because the vast majority of people do have an understanding that yoga would be beneficial health-wise, but the vast majority of them never take that first step to actually doing it, right? Like, they know they should, but they just don't. And I think what I've discovered, especially being part of Virgin Active, is that even our Virgin Active members, which when you think about it, like, that's still a very tiny percent of the population that have a membership to a gym, because even just going to a gym is intimidating and scary. Even those that have the courage to join a gym and rock up to a yoga studio. So there's one thing stepping inside a gym and paying for it. There's another stepping into a yoga studio, which for a lot of people, that's a mystifying space, like, oh my God, they speak another language. I have to be super flexible. I have to know all the poses and the postures. I don't know any of that. So there's fear there. There's so much fear there. My challenge when I see the kind of, what is inspirational and aspirational for some people, for most people, in my experience, for most people, that those images of super bendy bodies, or, epic handstands and arm balances, for the people that I've worked with in the gym space, Virgin Active space, that's creates more fear. Because, they're thinking, oh, I know yoga's good for me, I should try it, but I'm very scared. What does it look like on Instagram? And so they do that search and they find a lot of that stuff. And for the vast majority of people that I've worked with, that is like, oh my God, okay, I knew it wasn't for me, and that's just made it clear that I'm never going to be able to do that handstand. I'm never going to be able to do that wheel pose. I think in a lot of instances it creates even more fear and a greater barrier to people that want to step into the space. But I also understand that for a lot of those people, sharing that stuff, they're probably part of a yoga community. They might be at a yoga studio. And, I think sometimes as teachers, not just teachers, those that are also sharing yoga on social media, I think we just have to be aware of the space that we're in, and it's kind of, if you are in that, that really heavy yoga community space, and that most of your students are also joining you in the arm balance, or they're also joining you in the wheel pose, like, that's amazing. And I know for those people that is super inspirational and super aspirational, and it's probably working for them in many ways in regards to connection to body and connection to self, or creating this sense of accomplishment or achievement, or and those are positive things. I think we just need to be careful of that line between, where's the line between those moments being aspirational, positive, encouraging, and where's the line between, okay, I'm posting and sharing this stuff because it is coming from a place of ego, and look, we all like the likes, and we all get the dopamine hit when we see those likes and we see those comments. Like, I get it, of course. But I think we just need to be, yoga has taught us to be aware. And I think we just need to kind of practice that even more so, and just be mindful of your audience, and is some of the stuff we're sharing going to create more attendance in yoga, or is it going to make the divide between the person that's already fearful of stepping into the yoga studio, and what's actually happening in the yoga studio. And I think, that divide, what I see in most yoga studios, especially for the people that are listening right now that may have never done yoga, like, it's so rare that we're seeing the arm balances and the big back bends in a yoga studio anyway. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we're creating this image of like beautiful yoga poses by the beach. But if you just come and practice with me at Virgin Active, it's actually nothing like that, So it's like, what's the reality of yoga? Like, where does it even sit, Yeah. So yeah, look, I think there's a lot in there, and I don't want to diss on it. I just, let's be really conscious of what we're putting out and the intention of that. And if you are going to be, especially if you've got a big platform, of course, put your big, beautiful stuff out there, because that is going to be aspirational for some. But also, let's talk about yoga also, right? Like, let's talk about the other 7 limbs. And let's also talk about Shavasana and just sitting, like those are also just as aspirational, inspirational, and powerful. So I think, let's really be mindful of our intention, and also just make sure that the image we're putting out there of yoga is balanced and truly yoga.
Very well said. I totally agree. I'll tell you my story about that. Like, when I started, started looking at it as I want to offer these sessions and things like, and social media was very new at that time. And I'm like, so obviously, as any person, I hired someone who was non-yogi, the marketing guru. And the marketing guru was pushing me to post poses, because that's what he was saying, the yoga poses. And it was literally like I was at friction with him, because it just wasn't gelling with who truly I am, like my yoga, wisdom of yoga. And he said, no, those, a scanty clothed yoga poses will sell, that you'll get more likes. And he was right in a way, but it just really, I had to let him go, because it was such a big challenge for me to literally not be who I am. And so I came back, okay, if I don't get like that, doesn't matter. I'm just going to put my authentic self and my true self, what feels right for me. And I realized that it will attract the right kind of energy, because I don't really want to attract, the energy where people are attracting towards that kind of yoga. For me, yoga is very healing, very therapeutic. Yes, the back bends and strong poses are wonderful. They are also healing, and they're also challenging, and they also help us to conquer the fear. I'm not saying no to that. It's just that a lot of time our clients may not have capacity to do that. And so when we are teaching from the place, and I always believe that meeting client where they're at. So if our client is usually, and most of my client is a corporate world, where they're sitting mostly, on the chair, and maybe having like a practices like a jogging or something like that, but not necessarily the back bends and the forward bends, which are stronger practices. So we had to very gently ease them into that. Over the period of time, they can build up. But just conscious awareness that where our clients are, we need to meet them there. And when I came to this conclusion, I just settled in myself, and okay, this is, I want to put out there that this is what, makes sense to me. This is what I'm sharing. And that's what, as I said, like I mentor a lot of yoga teachers, and that's what I talk with them, like, your heartfelt business. It is a business, so you need to look at it from that point of view, but don't lose your true self, because that's what we sometimes do in wisdom of, in this finding balance between social media and promoting ourselves and running a business at the same time being true yogi. So finding that balance. What are your thoughts about this? Like, how does it make sense what I'm saying? Your comment on that?
Yeah, look, I wholeheartedly agree, that especially as a teacher, being true to yourself. I think you know, off the back of what we were just talking about in regards to social media, and seeing some yoga accounts or yoga teachers that have huge followings, and they are getting a lot, those huge followings a lot of the time because of the really challenging stuff that they can master with their bodies. And again, that's not necessarily the wrong thing, because that's probably them being their true self, and expressing themselves, expressing the best parts of themselves, which, that's beautiful and amazing. And again, if their intention for themselves and for yoga is to put that out there, and, then as long as that intention is matching their actions, then amazing, great for them. I think, though, that at times, as teachers, and especially as new teachers, we sometimes feel that we need to kind of replicate or also step into that space, or have this expectation of ourselves that we also need to be kind of at that level in regards to physical asana. And I think that can kind of then create this incongruency with who you are as a teacher, and who you are as a person, and kind of what you think you should be putting out into the world, because now you have this label as yoga teacher.
So, Mark, wanted to steer you towards the cultural appropriation. What are your thoughts about that? Because we hear it now a lot about cultural appropriation in yoga. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's an
I know it's a bit it's a bit challenging subject. Let me put it that way. Because
yeah. It
yeah,
is a it is a challenging subject. Look, I totally hear the need, and agree with the need that we need to be doing more to recognize the cultural home, um, the birthplace of yoga, um, and I think also being able to give South Asian people and South Asian teachers a greater voice when it
yeah,
comes to yoga.
yeah,
There's obviously, in the last 60, 70 years, yoga has exploded in the West. And I think, the adoption of yoga, and actually also the those that came from India and exported yoga into the West, you think of the intentions behind that, and I think in the vast majority of cases it's always been very positive, right? To spread the benefits of yoga and the teachings of yoga. I think it started in a place where, the intention was purely a positive thing. I think what's happened over that time, though, and you and I sitting here today talking about, being in Rishikesh, and, encouraging people to go back there. You're taking people back there to have that experience. And I think for me, doing that back in 2011, which was really, at a very, it was literally months after becoming a yoga teacher. I'm really grateful for that experience, right? Because it helped me to get a much deeper understanding of where yoga has come from and how yoga is practiced in India, and meeting people there where this is literally their culture. This is something that has been passed down through their family, right, to those people practicing yoga today, and it's so deeply ingrained as culture. I didn't value, recognize, or even understand that was the case until I went back to India, and went back until I went to India. And I think it was also seeing that I saw the difference, and as we spoke about earlier, right? Like my journey really started with power yoga here in Australia,
Mm,
and seeing the difference, and power yoga, developed in the US. It is, it is a practice for Western people, right? And I can see, and I've experienced how that style of practice is very attractive to us in the West. Um, but then that being the majority of my practice at that point, and then going to Rishikesh for the first time, and then practicing with people in their courtyards, in their upstairs bedroom, I was like, this is very different. Like it was a very different, even down to asana experience, it was very different. So that was a big mind blowing moment for me. And, and then I stepped into the ashram, and again, that was a very different experience. For 2.5 months living in an
mm,
ashram, practicing a range of different practices for hours and hours and hours every day. So I feel grateful that I've had that experience, and I've been able, due to that experience, and then going back in 2012 and doing the same thing again, like I've been able to, I guess, come out the other side having a much greater respect, admiration, understanding of the birthplace of yoga, and but still, I'm I'm still teaching in a way that's, I that is different to how I experienced yoga there. I guess I also struggle, especially coming from a big brand like Virgin Active. There's parts of me sometimes that struggles with how do we tackle this? Like how do we? When I look at most of our teachers globally, they aren't from, they don't have South Asian heritage. You
mm,
know, there's a lot of, even down to the way that we pronounce Sanskrit words and names for poses is sometimes, and maybe a lot of the time, not right. And I think there's a lot more that we can do. And I think as an example for me, ending a class with the word namaste, as I've started to have a better understanding of cultural appropriation, I choose to say the translation of namaste first before using the word to end the class. And I think that's just one small way that we can start to help bring greater awareness and understanding, not just saying namaste because that's just what you say, and actually no one in the room truly understands what that word even means. You know what I mean? Even using to start or end a class, just trying to give a better understanding of why is this happening? Why are
mm,
we doing this? What is the meaning of this? And what's the cultural significance if we're going to choose to rather than just kind of throwing it out there and kind of moving on, you know what I mean? So look, it's yeah, it is a big topic. It's a challenging one. I think there's a lot of positive intention in our Western community, in our Western yoga community, but I think there's a lot of ignorance and a lot of
yeah.
arrogance, and also arrogance, and I think that's what needs to change.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of small steps that we could, as yoga teachers in the West, especially those like me that don't have any South Asian heritage. It's not part of my culture. I wasn't born into this. I
Mm,
think there's a lot more that we could be doing to step towards kind of bringing greater recognition to the cultural heritage of yoga.
very, very well said. I am from India, originally from India, and yoga has been part of my life. I will put it this way that I couldn't escape yoga, because it was there. But I also lived in Western world for many years now. So half of my life I lived in India, half of my life I lived outside of India, and I have met amazing yogis. It's like I have met amazing yogis not just in India but outside of India. So for me, yoga is very it's something which is there is no ownership as such, right? Because yoga is a path for everyone. The sages, the wise beings, were very wise. They realized that bringing yoga to home, to people's life, and benefit of that, they intertwine it with the religious practices. And so for us, growing up in India, the first introduction of yoga is through meditation and through the energetic side of it, and then the physical side is there, but it's very, as you realize, that it's a very minimum. It's a different way of doing that. And also, uh, when I came to Western world, and I realized this, that there is not, at that time there was not even Sanskrit in a lot of Australian yoga teacher trainings. And so I started thinking that maybe I should share the Sanskrit with yoga teacher trainings. And in my meditation, I asked for sign. And it's amazing, like how that day I received very rare 4 boxes, like big boxes of Sanskrit books at my home, at my doorstep. And that was big sign for me. And so I started sharing Sanskrit with yoga teacher training, and I just do 2.5 hours to 4 hours sessions. I also teach all the philosophy and everything. And my intention behind this session is not that we start saying this to our clients, because not every client will be open for this. So first thing, to understand that this is for you, to because you are becoming yoga teacher, it's good to know like where yoga is coming from. So I talk about history of yoga, I talk about what is Sanskrit, and it is a language of yoga and all that. And so I created on demand courses as well, and those who are interested to use this for meditation practice, they can use the mantra side it. But I also make sure that people understand that it is not for everyone. So when I teach in my corporate world, I don't start with yoga chanting, and I always ask my clients permission, because here, what is the purpose behind sharing this wisdom? Is purpose is to help people. So it's not that I want to rub the Sanskrit on people's faces, but those who are open, I would love to share that with them. And so that's the place I'm from, and that's what I teach my clients, my students as well, that, always, because we should always be from the place of ahimsa. And so ahimsa here is, if it is challenging them, if it is, they're shying away from wisdom of yoga. There are so many ways we can share wisdom of yoga. It doesn't have to be om. You can use the asana names. You don't use asana names, but you can energetically help them to release the blockages of energy. And so all that understanding, when we get that, and when they open, they will ask like, why, where this is from, and then that time they are ready. So when they're ready, and when you give them this option, it actually opens up their mind. And obviously, there are beautiful practices like kirtan, like bhajan. They are beautiful devotional practices which are in Sanskrit. So if they're open for it, obviously they can come to this path. But again, we need to understand, as a yoga teacher, it's not for everyone. And so that's what I share with my students. And I do this. I do a lot of freelance Sanskrit and wisdom of yoga teaching to a lot of teacher training here in Australia as well as in US. And this is what I teach. Like I teach a big brand like a Core Power, which is from US, but it's a hot yoga. And but I come back to this, like I told them when they inquired with me, like, will you be coming on board to teach our teacher training? I said, I'm not changing my style. I'll be teaching what I teach authentically, and let's help your yoga teachers to understand that where yoga comes from, and let's see what they do with it. And it has been like I've been there with them for 4 years now, and it's they have it was received very well. So I think it's just we share this wisdom, allow it to blossom rather than making it a issue. And I truly believe that that's where the cultural appropriation should be, rather than making it tension, making it like, acceptance and receiving and giving in a positive sense. Uh,
Yeah.
i- India is also like, suddenly I see so many yoga studios in India, which wasn't like that when I was in India, some 30 years ago. And now you can see there is a commercialization there as well, and everybody is now saying that, I'm yoga teacher. Not maybe they are, maybe they're not. So there is also that side there, because it is bringing in a lot of money to their pockets. So they, I
Mm.
have seen like crazy yoga teacher training in India, in Rishikesh itself, and which was like very scary to see. Like there was no regards to people's wellness. So like there are both sides to it. And
Mm. Mm.
so literally be open-minded and receive, like realize that what is right for you, like come back to your awareness. And yoga is awareness. Once we become aware what is right for us, we will bring in the right practices, right? So that's
Mm.
what I think cultural appropriation is. And about namaste, namaste is not even Sanskrit word, it is a Hindi word. It
Mm.
comes from Hindi language. The Sanskrit word is namo namaha, which we hardly use, right? So that's
Mm.
like there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Mm.
And a lot of times, people say, "Oh, don't say that. Say this." Why not? This is such a beautiful word. But I always, just like you, I always say at the end of the practice that thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. I end my podcast that way as well. And it's the same sentiment, right? And then you can say namaste. You don't want to say namaste, that's fine. Sometimes I chant mantra when the people are open about it. Like I always ask and I say Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. And I explain meaning of this mantra. That means may
Mm.
all beings be well, happy, and free from suffering. And it's such a beautiful thing. People can connect with it. And
Mm.
now they started chanting with me, so it's really nice
Mm.
that as
Mm.
well. So I think as a yoga teacher, we can set the tone. If our heart is at right place, I think people can sense that. And I think there is a lot of this fear of cultural appropriation. I think come back to your heart center. If there is, it is coming from heart, and if there is no ill will towards the wisdom of yoga, then share it. That's what I truly believe. So that's my two bits about cultural appropriation. And
Beautiful.
so yeah, I truly believe that it is time to just allow, rather than separation, we need to allow this wisdom to flow really
Mm.
with conscious awareness, and that's what it is. So coming back to conscious
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank
Anything?
you for sharing that.
Thank you. Anything else you want to share, Mark?
Look, it's been really lovely chatting to you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, it's always great to talk about yoga, and I think, we've tackled some kind of big topics here, which is, you know, I'm just really grateful that you've put this forward and being able to have this space to tackle some of these bigger conversations like cultural appropriation, like the marketing of yoga. I think I think these are the important conversations we do need to be having as a yoga community as we continue to grow and expand yoga in places like Australia and the US and South Africa and the UK as we're doing. Like, I think these are really important conversations to be having, and and I think I think what you're doing with your podcast and the knowledge you put out into the world is really important for teachers. And I think, you know, we obviously do have a lot of yoga teachers on board with Virgin Active, and we do our best to kind of support and grow those teachers in the best way that we can. But I think sometimes it can be a bit of a lonely journey teaching
Yeah.
yoga. And I think, what you're putting out and how you're connecting with people and opening up this space for conversation, it can help to make this career choice we've made or this life choice we've made, it can help it to feel more community based. And it's interesting because we often become yoga teachers or we become yoga students because we step into this space of community. And, we are mostly practicing yoga these days as a group, in group style yoga. But I think, when you become that student into a teacher and then you're kind of out there delivering classes here and there and on the beach and in your backyard, and then it can kind of become a little bit lonely sometimes, it's kind of this conundrum between the community but also this loneliness as a teacher. So look, I'm just really grateful to be able to have this conversation and hope that your listeners have gotten something from it, and just really stoked that you've got this space and sharing your wisdom and thoughts. I think it's really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the community as well, because I hear you, and that's why I started something called the Wellness Tribe, because a lot of my students who have finished yoga teacher training and they're now teaching in the same thing, like it's a very lonely place to be. And so they wanted to have something, in their life, which is basically being with other healers, sharing their problems, sharing their wins, and sharing, any like knowledge gaining, all that. And so I created this community, which is called the Wellness Tribe, and people can actually join that. So feel free to visit my website. My listeners know all this already, but I will put the link in show note as well. And Mark, thank you for being here. I came across your information through LinkedIn actually, and I really wanted you to be on the podcast, but I think it never happened because you were traveling. And then, so finally, I'm so glad that we made it happen this time,
Yes.
And the funny thing is, I am leaving in a couple of days' time. So luckily, we got this time. So we are here now in Australia at the same time, which is lovely. And really appreciate what you're doing, and I totally understand the place like Virgin Australia. It's a gym thing, but also you're bringing heart to it, bringing the wisdom of yoga to it. And it's you're opening gate for people to understand, or door, I should say, for people to understand wisdom of yoga. And, they're taking step in and bringing this into their life. So really amazing thing you're doing. Really appreciate that. And that's why I wanted you to come on board on the podcast, because I always want to share people's journey, and your journey of yoga. It's very inspiring, and I'm sure my listeners will gain a lot of understanding, like how everyone's journey is unique, and you can still be who you are and share this wisdom in your own unique way. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
No
Bye.
worries. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're taking this time out of your day. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye for now.